and it is a great pleasure and honor to introduce Joshua Konkahoh to you. We really warmly welcome you, Joshua. Joshua is an African elder, an indigenous wisdom keeper, and an experienced social change movement builder. He's the founder of Better World Cameroon, or Cameroon, to be precise, the Spirit of Ndanifor, and the Indigenous and Modern Project. Joshua is now exiled in Portugal, and he is internationally, I guess, best known as the visionary behind the Ecovillage Permaculture projects, the Better World Cameroon. And these projects, together with Spirit of Ndanifor, are based on indigenous knowledge. They designed to be, in a way, a youth-led, solution-focused Permaculture and Ecovillage Alliance. And it's with that they form an international platform. But before I go into asking Joshua some questions, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself? What you have done in Cameroon, your passion for African wisdom, which you call the missing link, and your passion for permaculture, for going back to our own food production. Whatever you would like to tell us, please do.
I just want to, well, thank you first of all for having me. I'm really grateful to have a space in an international forum where they are talking about secret activism. Because my activism started when I was initiated at the age of 13 into the Elders Council of my village. And I became the custodian of culture to henceforth be initiating other people. But I had this torn apart from me because Christianity took me to do a colonial education, which took me to work in government for 22 years. And then I decided I'd had enough and to go back and start conducting rite of passage to help young people who believe in the myth or the myth of the West. This is how I came to be a member of the Defend the Secret Alliance, and also running Better World Cameroon as an incubator for the Global Ecovillage Network, Gen Africa. So how can I best introduce myself to you? Probably the initiation, because it's something that it's not easy to give a picture today after the so-called independence came with the multinationals and the new governments that eroded all of this. So I can only give a picture. Like, let me just say, come with me and use your mind's eye, like to see what I saw in my initiation. So I saw something that made me to have this lesson that as humans, we need not be stuck or needy or unsure in an abundant earth. So in the spiritual forest of the great continent of Amazonia, despite the cries the glass of the universe through which we see all community remains full and overflowing. So if you look up with me into the majestic trees of the virgin forest, you can call it the rainforest or the tropical forest. And you would notice that something commands you to silence. And if you observe well, you might begin to see the birds, different colors, a variety of colors. You might hear the song of the river, sometimes slow, sometimes rapid as a waterfall with its colors of the rainbow, the lush green of the diverse species of plants across the hills, the mountains, and the valleys. Then we are together, we come to this opening of the great rocks and stones where the ancestors command us to respect and silence. And then we hold our hands and we sit down in a circle, looking high up into the sky through the tunnel of the trees, of the blue sky, the sun, the moon. And what do you see? So you probably see the picture of an initiation in a spiritual forest. From that day, my life changed. I transcended into seeing the spirit and conversing with the ancestors. And I became a leader. The transition from the elders to the young happened instantaneously within 7 days. So why am I bringing all this? Because I feel that secret activism is the backbone of Africa, because it's responsible for the resilience. A continent that has been raped, enslaved, colonized, and right now, the multinationals are doing their best at exploiting all the resources. So we often call it soul medicine, activism. It's the only source of survival. That is the practice of ceremony. That's why ceremony became the only medicine which could unleash the potential of the youth as change makers and future leaders. It is also during these ceremonies that young girls are empowered to become not only the vessel that nurtures and cares for new life, but educators and organizers of community life. So I give thanks to the organizers of this Zoom for giving me this opportunity and this little space for the voice of Africa. The youth are concerned that this emerging world that is so much talked about, for it is supposed, or it's meant, or it's said to be a global culture. I just called on my ancestors in my local language. I invoke their presence to be with us and to accept that I speak in their name. So I center, and I will center most of my talk here on the children of Africa. Through the work that I had been doing with the youth, it was for the unborn child in this concept. And the concept of Ndanifor, most of you might know, it's related to Ubuntu. It's called in different names. So I adopted the name from my village to create the Ndanifor Permaculture Ecovillage, so that the liberation or to free the seeds of the future, because when you are initiated, you understand that you are being asked to come back and become like a child. So does the Bible say that in order to go to heaven, we have to become like little children. And the question maybe is whether we are humble enough to take this luxury to become like the child that is needed to be the angel and the seed of the future. So elsewhere, we read that mass graves are being unearthed somewhere. But in Africa, what is happening is that in my home country, Ambazonia, children have not been going to school for 5 years. Hospitals have been burnt down. Children are killed and buried in mass graves. So in speaking about healing the sacred earth, they become their voice also, the voice of the children in America, in Europe, in Asia, and the Oceanic. This is a content that I can relate to the work that I have been doing to bring these issues to the mind of the young people who have to develop their own pathways and not depend on the history of the Great Lakes, depend on the history of the French Revolution and the economy of working cash crops and become slaves in their minds. This is about youth entrepreneurship and women empowerment. I would stop here. So if you have another question for me, Christa, then I can explain a little bit more about what this Spirit of Ndanifor really is.
In again. Okay.
Muted.
I'm good.
Okay.
I can hear you. I can see you. We wanted to give you the whole screen, so I will come in and out because your teaching and what you're saying is very, very profound. And what I loved when you said that ceremony is the medicine of survival. And I also loved that you said, which really hit me, that the young people need to unlearn the history, which is not their history. They need to go back, don't they? And this is part of what you do. So I wanted to say something or see if this is leading us towards the next step. You said, and this was a quote I loved, you said, the world is really at a crossroad, and I'm thrilled about this opportunity for change. I am passionate about indigenous knowledge because it is the missing link. We old people are living libraries of the universe. We are the masters of how to live in harmony with this earth. So my passion is to bring this regenerative thinking to the world. Do you feel you want to talk about a bit how you bring this wisdom of Africa, this wisdom of regeneration, this wisdom of the elders, whatever it is, into this world?
I just thrown a link in the chat, which is how I connect this. What I mean is when I talk of rite of passage, it does not mean that is how it can happen today in the West. What I believe is that we are sitting in the same boat. I talked about the forest because the Congo Basin forest, to which our community belongs, is one of the lungs of the earth, and how the concept of spiritual forest helps everybody to know about conservation. So before we were imposed the education that we have today, I go back because I grew up during that time, pre-independence. And I try to recollect. So we cannot say in a modern Western society, a rite of passage ceremony will be conducted in this same way. What I'm saying is that there might be some ingredients in the indigenous knowledge systems which can be used to inspire the emerging world that we are talking about. In this case, we might share best practices which will make us masters of our fate. Some people have talked of an impending end of the world. I don't believe in this. That's why I call it an opportunity. A post-pandemic world is an opportunity for us to rethink the methods in which we used to build the systems. If we are sitting in the same boat, this is best described by the climate situation in which we are having. Individually, we also want to be captains of ourselves, looking for happiness, peace, love, and professional fulfillment. With us, we got this through the economy of love. There's no better way to describe. Everybody, if you needed a house to be built, everybody came out and the house was standing by the end of the day. If you needed a large farm, everybody came out. So this African solidarity that I see you in me and you see yourself in me is what has built, that's what I call the backbone. Despite the crisis, you still have happy children running around because it is based on food, the concept of food. If you know where your food is coming from, you receive gratification. So these are maybe some difficult conversations that I'm bringing because in my experience of mentoring youth and women, my mothers in the eco-village in Africa, I felt that I had met some strides because this project was recognized as the most inspiring project in Africa by the Gaia Trust, their Excellence Award in 2015. So that made me to feel that probably there was something in here. So in my work of finding ways of leading, where I became a leader and I'm still a leader, that shifts education and mindset, this concept. Something I feel strongly about, that the Ndanifor concept is a call to action to the West to consider indigenous wisdom as part of the intention, which requires that the world should change. And the rite of passage has now been developed into modern tools through the Indigenous and Modern. We are giving trainers courses to those who want to lead this kind of life but don't know how to do it. And I believe in the trainers of trainers because it has a rippling effect and goes on and on and on. And this is sustainability. And this is how it worked in my community. So in the Western sense, it could just mean the way we bring in values, which are not based on supremacy, for example, on exploitation, or on war, on violence. And developing technology with a soul. This is what we are trying to do, to connect technology with a soul to indigenous knowledge, so that we will come to a more humane society. So how can I best demonstrate this? Our forefathers, our founding fathers, brought honor and dignity to life based on these simple values of food, abundance for everybody. The waters were pure. We swam with the animals and life was a joy. But then I can invite all of us to come into a spiritual forest, which is no longer the one that I was initiated in, but the one that we create. So this is how I feel that we can look at the concept which I have developed and which I'm sharing with some organizations and with young people here in the West.
So I understand that. Can we go back a bit to the economy of love, you said? You talk a bit more about this, because it is also centered around food and community and the African ways, because I remember the sharing of food and the exchange and the planting and the community is something which is quite important, because you said indigenous knowledge needs to be combined with Western, with modern technology. So how can that be combined? How can we look? Because I think food is something very basic and we need to look at it differently. It's like with water. Like the previous speaker said, it's. Can you go a bit deeper into that, please?
Yes, water and love are the same thing. Water flows, so love flows. If love is contained in a glass, it is imprisoned.
So how do you connect this to food and the economy?
Because it is said that water is life. So if the earth waters the earth with a good seed in the earth, we will have abundance. I was laughing because you asked me to explain this concept when we are in the Christmas shopping season, where you believe that you will go and harvest everything in the shop. The children will never know, for example, where their chocolate comes from. They will never know, for example, why children are in mass graves in Africa, while I was describing these scenes. And so long as the education is the key, let me explain a little bit how it happened. Just a few years, I was like 20 years old. If you needed to marry, it was a celebration that you brought food. And everybody would partake in that food. And it's a blessing for the couple that brings food. It's just like he who brings food brings life, water brings life, and that is a basis of love. If people don't eat together, and the reason why in these ceremonies we honor food, here you speak over your food. I mean, it's like trampling on the honor of any other thing that is not our ego. You know, everything is below us. So long as we do not learn to honor the things that give us life, that's the same reason why we do not honor the earth. We do not honor our environment. We do not even honor our families. We don't honor our friends, even our wives. So these values are intrinsic in the way that they flow. We know, I believe from my own initiation, that all the creation, the things are the physical side of God. Be it whatever we believe as God, there must be something which is superior than us. That is why there are systems that created us. We come to realize that we are in a certain container that gives us life. And if we were to listen deep enough, we have closed all the silent spaces that we cannot no longer hear the messages. Like the messages I got from the spiritual forest. It's a whole book that I cannot write. And because it's a mystery, and because this is what we defend in secret activism, we are defending life. Because the violence of the human, we are no longer just being. Like when you see any plant food, it is a being, it is just there. Okay, you can maybe be polite to say, maybe, can I take you? Or you can just destroy, or you can treat it anyhow. So in this concept, the question we are asking is, are we trying to change the systems that created us? Or we are now realizing that we need to change the systems that we have created?
Yes, and it is, of course, we need to change the systems that we have created. And remember that this whole system created us, gives us life. The earth, the plants, the animals, the water. And our ancestors. Because this is here very difficult, isn't it? We are not connected, even to the humans which gave us life.
Joanna is mentioning the Standing Rock.
Yeah.
And this is, it's something that the West needed to pay attention, because I came to the West because I came to participate in the Defend the Secret Alliance. And this Standing Rock initiated something in the world through the water work that went all around the world. And I came in listening to a talk about how important we need to take care of the waters of the earth. So this activism is deep listening and deep understanding of what is actually happening. This clash of the systems that we are creating with the systems that created us, which needed to be in harmony. And if we are careful about it, then we will be bringing all the elements in a holistic way, such that there is peace and harmony.
It's interesting coming to that, because you say listening, and I think listening is very important, isn't it? Listen to the earth again, to the water, and so on. But somebody said here, we have lost our rites of passage, our ceremonies, and we replace them with expensive gifts for Christmas. And I think this is quite an interesting remark, isn't it? If you have lost the things which connect you to life itself, you create a very artificial life. And spending money and the gifts is a substitute. Would you see it like this?
Yeah, well, that is why I was a bit hesitant about saying that at Christmas we should seek solidarity, because that is what it meant. We didn't have this concept. What does it profit to go and gather everything in the supermarket and stay there with your telecommand and your television and eat and drink alone? As social beings, then we are no longer social beings. We agree that we should become part and parcel of the machine and be artificial. In fact, we hate our natural being. And this is something that is in the education. So regenerative education is something that is coming into force. This is the sudden realization. I think that's what the crisis, the pandemics have revealed to us, that we need to shift our mindsets. It's not a question of Africa. We are all victims of an education system that no longer serves us.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe that this secret activism has ignited something. And this light should spill into the world. We are looking for everything that we have, but we keep looking for an artificial one. We have to go back to the roots, because from the roots, the Mother Earth, we can bring up all the solutions.
Yes, yes. So many speakers said that so far, no matter from which continent, no matter from which part of the world they are coming. It is this coming back to the roots and adjusting our way of life to the natural laws instead of the other way around. It's really profound, isn't it, to come back down to earth and come back to the roots. Of course, the whole education system, no matter where we look at in the world, is from here up. It's not about the roots, is it? It's about something completely different. So when you work with young people, is that what you're doing? You're bringing it down to planting, food production, ceremony. Is that what you envisage or what you do, what you try to do?
Yes,
Concrete.
I mentioned that the whole concept is about reconnecting not only the young people, but everybody back to the land.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's like we no longer feel the gravity of the earth. we feel another gravity pulling us to Mars. And so we develop all the technology in that sense. And that's why I mentioned that we need technology which has a soul, which is still connected to the soul of the creation of this earth. So what we have been trying to do in this connection is just miraculous, because if you were 30, 40 years ago and came with me into the spiritual forest when I was not yet exiled, you would suddenly have a feeling, a therapeutic healing effect.
Mm.
So all the diseases that we have created or have come about are because of an imbalance of how this community of beings. I remember when I was a babysitter, and the mothers always advised that I should put the baby on the earth when we go to the farm. And the baby will be grabbing worms, grabbing everything into the mouth. And she would say, no, the nature has a way of creating balance, because the child needs bacteria for his body to be strong. The child needs all these viruses. But today, we have a clinical way of purifying ourselves from the other elements. Maybe this is what is causing all the health disasters that we see today. Because naturally, we were not supposed, since I started living on herbs and living the right way as I was taught, I don't know hospital, I don't know chemical drugs. Isn't this something, I'm saying from my own experience, isn't this something maybe worth looking into? Can food be medicine? The way that we eat. So when young people themselves who have gone to school can develop, I say this with tears coming out of my eyes, because I saw in the refugee camps, I have traveled through the eco-villages of West Africa, and that the refugees are not allowed to even plant something in the earth. These are people who have been uprooted from their culture. So that is just one picture, but I see the trauma of exterminating the cultures of other people. When I look at my case, if I give my name as Joshua, people say, as Konkankoh, people say, no, you should call yourself Joshua, because they cannot identify with something that's not been given by them. It's the same with the education. It's the same with the economy. I mean, whenever I give a talk about Ndanifor, people will say, but which scientist or which book, you know? So this situation of education is troubling, because it has turned both the children in Africa into zombies and the children in the West into zombies. I give an example of this. Most of the students who came to the camps told me that they came back to the West transformed. And I'm meeting most of them. I'm still following up with most of them. And so maybe healing is not just about going to the doctors. Since we are all traumatized, either by the way we treat water, or either by the way we treat our food, either by the way we disconnect from the earth. So the education which we have developed, called regenerative education, is both to regenerate the earth and to regenerate our minds. The issue of love, when you asked about the economy, is not the Valentine love. It's a kind of love that only someone with the language of the heart can understand. Such romanticizing, I don't know how to use, they are not in my language. Because in my language, the word love is something like, it's always like a story, something that is above money, above material, above anything living. And what is this thing? I think love is the most abused word in the world, the way it is being used. And it has turned us into what we have become. If we are no longer socially attached to each other, spiritually, we are also detached because we are part of the spirit. In our culture, we believe that the spirit is one. So if the systems of the world are not harmonizing as one, we are simply perpetuating the divide and rule, which brings about competition, violence, exploitation, and consequently death. Then we begin to talk about an impending end of the human species. As an African custodian of the culture, I often find difficulties in speaking in other fora where it's not like-minded people. Because they probably think that what good can come from Africa. We don't even believe that Africa is the cradle of civilization, or maybe was, or maybe still have something to do with the future. These are great continents. Look at what we term the global south, or the less, or the underdeveloped. We carve out a whole section of the world, because in most of the conferences, gatherings that I attend, people love this word. The new password is inclusive. It means that we have developed the system and you are maybe included if you toe the line. It's not like, maybe I give a picture of an anthropologist who came to Africa and he put a bag of sweets under the tree and asked the children to compete. The one who reaches there first will have the whole basket of sweets. And they say, but this is not our education. How can I be happy if I have it alone with that? And the children held their hands and they walked slowly and they got under the tree and they sat down the tree. So this is the concept. I call it like the wisdom that I'm talking about is the baobab tree. The baobab tree is the huge tree in the village where we gather under to resolve all the differences. And no one can embrace this wisdom. We all have to chain up together in order. This is probably the test of the world. If we are going to win this battle of change that we are talking about. Change is painful. Well, as a mother, you can know for anything new to come about, there is a certain break. We have to break with this something for the new to emerge. And this is painful. But we are so comfortable in our zones that we are defending. Because I can put it this way, in Africa, we defend the secret is something else. And in the West, the secret is something else. In the West, the secret is our comfort zone.
Yes. 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 Keep going.
Yeah, I don't know how this concept of secret earth, because the earth is secret, because something secret, it's mysterious. It means only the initiated can get it. And that's why the education that we have cannot initiate us to understand what the secret of the earth is.
It is, of course, expressed as the great mystery, isn't it? And this is where our education defies all that has been said for hundreds of thousands of years. Is our education does not lead us into exploring that mystery and the sacredness. It leads us away from it. And that's really interesting. But I'm looking at the clock. We are almost finished. I'm looking at some of the comments, and I think I want to read some to you because.
Okay.
Do you
I
mind?
wasn't able to read because I took off my glasses.
Okay, so somebody said, I found living in Africa was such an eye-opener to a different life. And I remember you and I spoke about it when I was in Uganda. It was a massive eye-opener because we are so far removed from a community life. We don't even know how far we were removed from it. You know, that's the problem. But somebody also said, I could listen to you speak all day, Joshua or Konkankoh. And then it says, is that the concept of Ubuntu? Do you know the concept of Ubuntu?
That is what I meant when I said that everybody,
that's what she asks.
Everybody in Africa is a secret activist because they understand this secret of Ubuntu. We miss it in the West because it is not modern.
Yeah. Okay, that was the question was, is that the concept of Ubuntu? Okay, it is the concept of Ubuntu. Do you want to say a few more words about this, the Ubuntu concept? Because people obviously are interested. Do you mind?
Yes. One of the participants, my dear friend Carlota, has asked me also in the chat to speak about what I'm doing with Adrian, which I met Adrian in the Defend the Secret Alliance. Somebody mentioned Standing Rock. All the activists met in Portugal. And they were talking about this change. So I came up to Adrian when he developed a system called Weaving Lab. That is a lab where we can weave all these connections, all the movements into a system of understanding how we want to navigate this new journey into the future. It turned out that in the whole gathering, there was nobody interested. So we ended up only the two of us. And we said this concept is, first of all, about bridging the intergenerational gap. I think he was 19. And when he started his weaving lab, and I started my Better World Cameroon in 1996. So we agreed that it would be intergenerational because the elders are supposed to download or to mentor the younger generation. And it is intercultural because we are connecting continents, connecting people, connecting communities. So through this, we developed a way using technology. So it's also about connecting technology to the indigenous, or what we call the rural that we completely abandoned. And when we go to look, we are talking about a future. A majority of the people who will constitute the future are living in these places, but they have no internet. They are not supposed to be part of this. So how can we? So at the same time, it's using the system of Ubuntu to talk about solidarity in a larger sense. Because when people talk about solidarity, they are thinking about themselves and their friends, or maybe just like the concept of a family in the West. So we started off by saying that in order to create a global family, we have to use technology. Definitely, we cannot go back. We are not saying that we should go back and leave. But if there are ingredients of making the concept here, why don't we just harvest it? And if the education mindset believes that any bridge that we build should be a two-way, not a one-way traffic, as the sun always shines from Europe to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so this
Or
is
from America
the
to
basis of this concept of the indigenous and the modern coming together to create the new.
Yeah. And I think this is exactly where it needs to go. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer that it needs to be indigenous and modern. And so people say they are interested. You are wonderful to listen to, Joshua. Thank you for sharing this. Now, somebody said, how can we contact you? And I said, contact him via his website. Is the Indigenous and Modern website, is there a contact sheet? I don't remember. There is, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah, so
on either of the websites, you can contact the Better World Cameroon website. It's also, yes. And well, of course, I can also drop my email and
I wanted to ask you, can we share your email? Do you want
yes,
to
please
do that now?
share my email.
Do you want to do that? I need to look it up, but I can find it.
I can just drop it in the chat.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, do. Yes, that's the Better World Cameroon. Thanks, Carlotta. And email is coming from Konkankoh in a second. You got it? Yeah, it is. co@betterworldcameroon.com. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So we have run out of time. Yeah, the most questions are about how can we contact you, and then people, of course, talking about their Africa experiences, because I don't know if you saw it, because some people grew up in Africa or were there for a while, and there's a chat about this. Thank you, inspiring Konkankoh. What a wonderful connection. Thank you, Joshua. So there is bits and pieces. We will let you have those together with the recording, which we will let you have in a few days. So hopefully you can have a read. So it is 1 o'clock and we need to stop. Yeah, more. Yes. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. Rich sharing. Lots of thank yous coming in. So, and I have to thank you for agreeing to be with us. And the Indigenous and Modern Project is actually fantastic. Have a look at it. I'm just reading through it myself and see what's there and how we can maybe on the long run do something together. So watch this space, and thank you ever so much, Konkankoh, for being with us. Is there anything else you want to say at the end?
Just one little thing, because we have to honor each other and thank each other. That the wisdom which I carry and I believe in is the ability of leaders, those of us who are leaders, to make decisions based on insightful understanding of the nature of man and the nature of the environment. I think this is the bottom line for me. And as we go out of here, I believe that we will start to help the next generation and not only think about ourselves, the unborn child.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And
Well,
thank you ever so much.
thank you for inviting me.
You are very welcome and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. My lunch is standing right there on the table.
I thought it would be.
Thank you.
Okay.